Mark Reynolds adjusted the thrusters of his spacecraft as the dark, uncharted edges of the solar system loomed ahead. He was miles from any human contact, yet he felt a surge of anticipation. His mission was routine data collection, but the cosmos had a way of surprising you. "Spacecraft Echo, do you copy?" Mark's voice crackled over the comm system. "Copy, Echo. This is Mission Control. What's your status?" replied Commander Jenkins, his voice steady and calm back on Earth. "All systems green. Approaching the Kuiper Belt for the scans." Mark adjusted his headset, his eyes scanning the control panels. Just as Mark aligned his instruments, a blip appeared on his radar. It was large, moving at an improbable speed, and heading straight towards him. "Control, I've got an unidentified object coming my way fast. Advise, over." "Echo, maintain course. Activate your cameras. Let's see what we're dealing with," Jenkins commanded. As the object neared, Mark toggled his camera feed, the lenses focusing on a sleek, metallic craft of unknown origin. It was unlike anything human engineers had built, a seamless silver body with pulsating lights running along its sides. The alien craft matched speed with Mark's spacecraft, hovering beside it in the silent vacuum. Then, without any warning, a communication link opened. "Hello, human," a voice said, modulated but clear. It had an odd accent, as if the syllables were formed by an unfamiliar mouth. Mark stared at the communication panel, his heart racing. "Hello," he replied cautiously. "I am Mark Reynolds, of the Earth Space Agency. May I ask who I am speaking to?" "I am Zelar of Zeltrax. I greet you in peace," the voice responded. Mark took a moment to process the situation. First contact. It was every astronaut's dream, and his training kicked in. "Greetings, Zelar. What brings you to this part of space?" "My mission is one of exploration and knowledge. Your vessel piqued my curiosity. I am here to learn," Zelar explained. "Understood. Would you consent to a meeting? I believe there is much we could learn from each other," Mark proposed, hoping his superiors would agree to this unexpected turn of events. "A meeting is acceptable. Prepare for boarding," Zelar replied, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the universe. Within minutes, Mark's airlock cycled open, and Zelar stepped through. The alien was tall, his skin a shimmering shade of blue, with eyes that reflected a wise, starry cosmos. His presence was imposing, yet serene. "Your form is different from what we expected," Mark noted, extending his hand in a gesture of human welcome. Zelar looked at the hand, then mimicked the gesture. "And yours is most peculiar to us as well. This is a fruitful beginning." As they shook hands, an alert sounded. Mark glanced at his monitor. "Seems like you're causing quite a stir back on Earth, Zelar. Our approach has been detected. Then we must not waste time. There is much to discuss, and your leaders will have many questions," Zelar said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Mark nodded, leading Zelar to the communication console. "Let's start by introducing you to Earth. There's a lot to explain." As the Earth spun silently below them, a new chapter in human history began to unfold, driven by the curiosity and bravery of two vastly different beings from distant worlds. Mark Reynolds and Zelar sat opposite each other in the compact utilitarian meeting room aboard the spacecraft Echo. A holographic display illuminated their faces, cycling through images of Earth and charts detailing human society. Zelar's gaze lingered on an image depicting a human family. "Mark, your species' social structures are intriguing. Your reproductive methods, are they similar to most terrestrial life forms?" Zelar asked, his voice tinged with a clinical curiosity. Mark shifted uncomfortably, not expecting this turn in conversation so soon. "Well, reproduction is a personal topic for humans. It involves combining genetic material from two individuals. It's a bit more complex in terms of emotions and social bonds." "Fascinating," Zelar murmured, leaning closer. "And is it true that emotional bonds often drive this genetic combining? This is quite different from Zeltraxian methods." "Yes, exactly. Emotional and sometimes lifelong bonds," Mark confirmed, realizing that nothing in his training had prepared him for discussing human intimacy with an alien. He chuckled nervously. "It's about love, often not just reproduction." "Love, a concept we understand but observe differently. I must ask, and I mean no disrespect, could I observe this process? To understand better?" Zilar's question was innocent, yet it hung in the air heavily, like a strange new planet in Earth's orbit. Mark almost laughed, thinking it was a joke, but Zilar's expression was earnest. That's not something we can just arrange for observation, Zilar. It's private, deeply personal. I see. Perhaps I misspoke, Zilar replied, his tone unchanging. I meant no intrusion into privacy. We Zeltraxians are more detached in our methods. I am here to learn, Mark, about all facets of humanity. Mark nodded, appreciating the delicacy of the situation. Let's put that request on hold. There's plenty more about humans that can be shared without getting too personal. How about we discuss our art, music, or culinary practices? Indeed, these are also aspects of your culture I wish to learn about. Lead the way, Mark, Zilar said, his tone appreciative. Mark guided Zilar through a digital gallery of Earth's artistic achievements, from the Renaissance to modern abstract movements. Zilar absorbed every detail with an astute focus, asking insightful questions that reflected his deep respect for human creativity. The discussion moved to music, and Mark played pieces ranging from Beethoven's symphonies to contemporary pop hits. Zilar was particularly fascinated by the emotional reactions each piece evoked in humans, noting the physiological and psychological responses with keen interest. As the ship orbited Earth, the alien's bold request lingered in Mark's mind, challenging his perceptions of normalcy and privacy. It was clear this interstellar exchange was going to reshape many aspects of human understanding, starting with how they shared their culture with those who were truly foreign. As the spacecraft Echo entered Earth's atmosphere, a mix of excitement and anxiety filled the control room. Mark Reynolds and Zilar, still deep in conversation about human arts and culture, were momentarily silenced by the breathtaking view of the blue planet below. Prepare for a bit of a shake, Mark warned, as the spacecraft began to rattle slightly from the atmospheric entry. Zilar, observing the procedure with keen interest, nodded. Your planet is beautiful, Mark. It is much more vibrant than Zeltrax. The shaking subsided as they glided towards the designated landing site, where a welcome committee awaited, consisting of international delegates, scientists, and a tight perimeter of security. News of Zilar's visit had leaked to the public, stirring a global frenzy, equal parts fear, curiosity, and wonder. As they landed, Mark turned to Zilar. Ready to meet the rest of the world? I am prepared, Zilar responded, his voice calm, but carrying a trace of anticipation. Exiting the spacecraft, they were greeted by a sea of cameras and microphones. Mark led Zilar to a podium set up for an immediate press conference. The air was thick with whispered questions and the click of camera shutters. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, Mark began, addressing the crowd. This is Zilar, a representative from Zeltrax. We've come in peace, and during our journey we've shared much about our respective cultures. Zilar stepped forward, his alien appearance causing a murmur through the crowd. I am here to learn from humanity and to share knowledge of the Zeltraxians. Your world has much to teach us. The statement seemed to ease some of the tension among the onlookers. Reporters began firing off questions about Zilar's intentions, his world, and what humans could learn from his technology. As the questions grew more probing, especially about the reproductive query Zilar had made earlier, which had also reached the public, Mark intervened. Let's remember that this is a diplomatic visit. We're here to foster understanding and cooperation. The conference ended with plans for Zilar to tour various cultural and scientific landmarks on Earth. Mark and Zilar were escorted to a secure facility where they would strategize their next moves. That evening, in a quiet moment away from the media's prying eyes, Mark and Zilar reviewed their schedule. You've made quite an impression, Zilar, but remember, humans are protective of their privacy and wary of the unknown, Mark advised. Zilar acknowledged this with a nod. It is similar when new species arrive on Zeltrax. Fear and curiosity are universal. The following days were packed. Zilar visited museums, universities, and research centers. Everywhere they went, crowds gathered, and Zilar handled each encounter with an admirable blend of dignity and openness. In a world buzzing with the possibility of interstellar alliances and the shadow of intergalactic threats, Zilar's visit became a pivotal moment for Earth's leaders to reflect on their place in the cosmos. Mark watched as old rivalries began to calm, replaced by a unified curiosity about the vast starry universe. The whirlwind tour continued, bringing Zalar to major cities across the globe. His presence was a spectacle that many could scarcely believe, yet his sincere interest in Earth's cultures fostered a growing respect among the people. However, not all responses were positive. In a high-security meeting room in Washington, D.C., government officials gathered with Mark Reynolds to discuss the implications of Zelar's visit. "We need to address the mixed signals here," stated Diane West, the U.S. Secretary of State, her tone firm yet concerned. "While many see this as a step towards a broader understanding, there are significant voices that express fear and suspicion." Mark nodded, understanding the delicate balance they had to maintain. "Zalar is here to learn, not to threaten. We've managed to keep most of our sensitive discussions private, but it's the unknown that's fueling most of the fear." "The request to observe human reproduction hasn't helped," added General Carter, head of national security. "It's being twisted into sensational headlines that paint Zalar as invasive rather than curious." "We need to spin this, control the narrative more tightly," Diane suggested. "Perhaps more emphasis on the technological and scientific benefits of this interstellar relationship." Mark agreed, but he knew that managing public perception would be tricky. As their meeting concluded, he relayed the outcomes to Zalar, who was waiting in an adjacent room. "Zalar, the leadership is concerned about how your questions, especially about human reproduction, are being received," Mark explained. "We have to be more cautious with how we communicate your curiosities." Zalar's expression, usually calm, flickered with a hint of frustration. "I understand. It is not my intention to cause unrest. On Zeltrax, such inquiries are common in the spirit of knowledge sharing." "I know, but here it's different. Let's focus on technology and your environmental solutions for now," Mark suggested, hoping to steer their interactions back onto safer ground. The next day, at a conference in New York City dedicated to climate change, Zalar presented Zeltraxian methods of ecological management, which were met with enthusiasm and wonder. His solutions for renewable energy and waste reduction showcased the benefits of their visit, helping to alleviate some of the tensions. However, outside the conference center, protests had begun to stir. Groups holding signs reading, "Keep Earth Human" and "No Alien Overlords" were growing in number. Mark watched from a window, his brow furrowed. "This is what we feared," he said to Zalar, pointing out the gathering crowd. Zalar watched quietly, his gaze thoughtful. "Fear of the unknown is indeed a powerful force. Perhaps I can address them directly?" Mark hesitated, then nodded. "It might help. Let's try to bridge this gap." Together they stepped outside, approaching the crowd with a mixture of caution and determination. Zalar raised his hands, signaling peace, and began to speak. "People of Earth, I come in peace. I seek only to learn and share. Our worlds are different, but there is much we can gain from one another. I respect your fears, but I ask also for your openness. Let us learn from each other and grow together." His words, sincere and clear, made some lower their signs, listening intently. While not all were convinced, the tension eased slightly, allowing for a moment of quiet reflection among the noisy dissent. As they returned inside, Mark patted Zalar on the back. "Well done. It's a small step, but it's forward." Zalar nodded, his eyes on the horizon. "Every journey begins with such steps, Mark. Let us continue to walk this path together." As Zalar's visit progressed, the intergalactic guest showed an increasing interest in understanding the deeper aspects of human culture beyond the initial shock and novelty of his arrival. Mark took it upon himself to introduce Zalar to various human experiences that illustrated the breadth and depth of human emotion and connection. One evening, they visited a popular theater in London to watch a classic play, which delved into themes of love, betrayal, and redemption. The actors' passionate performances and the intense emotional dialogue captivated Zalar, offering him a glimpse into the complexity of human relationships. "Human emotions are intricate," Zalar remarked as they left the theater, the chilly air making their breaths visible. "The capacity for such profound love and equally profound sorrow is remarkable." Mark smiled, nodding in agreement. It's what makes us human. Our emotions drive us for better or worse. They're essential to every aspect of our lives, including those you've been curious about, like reproduction. The mention of reproduction reminded Zilar of his earlier misunderstood request. I realize now how my questions might have seemed intrusive. It's a subject entwined with your emotions and social bonds. Yes, and that's why it's guarded with such privacy, Mark explained as they strolled towards a small, cozy cafe. Inside, they sat down with hot beverages, observing people around them engaging in quiet conversations or lost in their own thoughts. Observing your people in these settings, I see the nuances, Zilar continued, his eyes scanning the room. It's not just about the survival of the species, but about connections that transcend the physical. Mark was pleased to see this understanding dawning on Zilar. Exactly. And it's those connections that can create new life in a way that's respected and cherished. Their conversation was then steered towards other human experiences. Over the next few days, Mark introduced Zilar to various cultural festivals, culinary traditions, and community events. Each experience was carefully chosen to show the diversity of human life and the multiple ways in which humans express themselves and interact with each other. They visited a music festival where the thumping of drums and the melody of guitars filled the air, and people danced with abandon. Zilar was fascinated by the communal joy and the universal language of music that seemed to draw all humans together. Music transcends words, Mark shouted over the music. It's another form of expression, deeply emotional and incredibly powerful. Zilar nodded, his body swaying slightly with the rhythm, a smile creeping across his face. I see that music is a celebration of life itself. Their journey together not only educated Zilar about human culture, but also deeply affected how he viewed his own perceptions and values. Through art, music, and shared moments, he gained a profound respect for the complexity and beauty of human life. The culmination of their cultural exchange came when they attended a wedding. Here, Zilar witnessed the profound declarations of love and commitment, a direct observation of the human bonding he had been so curious about. Watching the couple exchange vows under a floral arch, Zilar turned to Mark, his voice soft. This is beautiful. The promise of lifelong companionship, support, and love. It's truly moving. Mark nodded, proud to have facilitated this deep, respectful exchange between worlds. It's moments like these that define us, Zilar. It's about love, not just reproduction. As the wedding party continued, laughter and music filling the night, Zilar understood the sacredness of the human condition, a tapestry woven with threads of joy, sorrow, and love, each as vital as the next. As Zilar's understanding of humanity deepened, his presence on Earth began to influence various spheres of human activity, from culture to technology. However, the seemingly peaceful exchange was not without its complications. As news of his interest in human intimacy continued to circulate, certain factions began to view his presence with increasing suspicion and hostility. One evening, while Mark and Zilar were attending a lecture on human-alien cooperation at a university in San Francisco, a group of protesters gathered outside. Their signs were bold and accusatory, with slogans like "Earth for Humans" and "Aliens Out." The peaceful intention of the lecture was overshadowed by the brewing unrest outside. Inside, Zilar was discussing the potential for shared technological advancements between humans and Zeltraxians, focusing on environmental sustainability. The audience, a mix of academics, students, and curious citizens, listened intently, appreciating the aliens' insights. However, the tension from outside began to seep in as distant shouts pierced the calm atmosphere. Mark, sensing the growing unease, leaned over to Zilar. "We might need to cut this short. Things are getting heated outside." Zilar nodded, his expression calm but concerned. "It is regrettable that our discussions stir such fear." As they concluded the lecture and prepared to exit through a back door, they were ambushed by a group of radical activists who had infiltrated the building. The activists were not just protesters, they were extremists who believed that any alien presence on Earth was a threat to human sovereignty. "Go back to where you came from, alien," one shouted, as they surrounded Mark and Zilar. Mark stepped in front of Zellar, trying to de-escalate the situation. "We're here for peace. There's no need for violence," he asserted, his voice steady. Despite his efforts, the confrontation escalated quickly. One of the activists lunged forward, attempting to grab Zellar. Reacting swiftly, Zellar used a non-lethal Zeltraxian defense technique, emitting a brief, stunning pulse that halted the attackers in their tracks, giving him and Mark a chance to escape. They hurried back to their secured accommodation, shaken but unharmed. There, in the safety of a fortified room, they debriefed with a team of security advisors and diplomats. "This incident shows we have underestimated the fear and hostility among certain groups," one of the diplomats explained, reviewing the security footage. "Your safety and the mission's goals are now at a critical juncture." Mark looked at Zellar, concern evident on his face. "Maybe it's time to reconsider the public aspects of your visit. We need a strategy to manage these threats." Zellar agreed, his usual composed self slightly ruffled by the day's events. "It seems my pursuit of understanding has unintentionally provoked fear and aggression. We must find a way to bridge this divide without compromising our safety." The next few days were spent re-evaluating their approach. Public appearances were minimized and engagements were carefully selected to ensure both safety and the continuation of cultural exchange. Meanwhile, Mark and Zellar worked on a series of public service announcements aimed at demystifying the alien presence and emphasizing the benefits of interstellar cooperation. These efforts gradually helped to calm public fears. The incident served as a stark reminder of the challenges that lay in reconciling human nature with the unknown, pushing both Mark and Zellar to find more thoughtful ways to engage with Earth's diverse and sometimes volatile population. In the wake of the recent attack, the atmosphere around Mark and Zellar's mission shifted palpably. The increased security measures and selective public appearances helped to maintain peace, but a tangible undercurrent of tension persisted. Despite these precautions, a more severe threat was looming, one that would test their resolve and the fragile relationship between humans and Zellar. Late one evening, while reviewing strategies to foster better understanding between humans and Zeltraxians, Mark received an urgent call from his superior at the Earth Space Agency. "Mark, we've intercepted some chatter that suggests a militant group is planning a direct assault to capture Zellar. They believe that holding him will allow them to negotiate for advanced technologies and possibly leverage against other nations." Mark's heart sank. "Understood. We'll prepare to move to a more secure location first thing in the morning." But the militants were quicker. That very night, armed assailants breached the compound where Mark and Zellar were staying. Alarms blared as Mark and Zellar, now accustomed to emergency protocols, quickly moved to a fortified safe room designed to withstand considerable assault. As they hunkered down, Zellar turned to Mark, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Mark, if they capture me, do not negotiate. My people will not endanger your world for my sake." Mark nodded, grimly setting his jaw. "It won't come to that. We'll get out of this." The attackers used every tool at their disposal, but the building's defenses held long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Amidst the sound of sirens and gunfire, a specialized counter-terrorism unit stormed the compound, effectively overpowering the militants. The swift response prevented the attackers from reaching Mark and Zellar, and soon the area was secured. In the aftermath, as they were escorted out of the compound under heavy guard, Zellar looked around at the damage, the fear in the eyes of the human agents. "This hatred and fear, is it always like this?" Mark sighed, his eyes weary. "Sometimes, Zellar. Sometimes fear drives people to extreme actions. But remember, there are many more who stand for peace and understanding. We can't let this define our mission." Determined to turn the incident into a rallying point, Mark and Zellar agreed to a series of televised interviews and public addresses. In each appearance, they highlighted the importance of compassion, understanding, and the shared benefits of human-alien cooperation. Zellar spoke eloquently about his own world's history of overcoming fear and prejudice, drawing parallels that resonated with many on Earth. "On Zeltrax, we learned that fear divides, but knowledge unites. Let us focus on what brings us together, not what tears us apart." These messages began to permeate the public consciousness, slowly shifting the narrative from one of fear to one of hopeful collaboration. Universities, think tanks, and cultural organizations extended invitations to Mark and Zelar, eager to hear more about Zeltraxian culture and technology in a context that celebrated diversity and interstellar friendship. As the weeks passed, the initial resistance softened, transforming into a cautious but growing acceptance. This shift was not universal, but it was a start, a foundation upon which Mark and Zelar could continue to build a bridge between their worlds. In the weeks following the attack, the mood around Mark and Zelar's mission shifted from defensive to proactive. As the dust settled, a renewed sense of purpose emerged. The cultural exchange, once marred by fear and suspicion, began to flourish under the banner of resilience and mutual curiosity. Mark and Zelar, now frequent figures in media and educational forums, continued their efforts to demystify each other's cultures. Zelar, with his calm demeanor and insightful observations, became particularly adept at addressing public concerns about alien technologies and intentions. Mark, on his part, facilitated discussions that bridged human and Zeltraxian perspectives, fostering a dialogue that highlighted shared values and common goals. As their final public appearance approached, the venue chosen was the United Nations headquarters in New York, where leaders from around the world gathered to hear the culmination of what had started as a simple scientific mission and had grown into a profound diplomatic endeavor. Mark opened the session with a reflective tone. When Zelar and I first met, it was under the stars, far from the noise and chaos of Earth. We spoke about our worlds, our people, and our hopes. We knew that bringing two vastly different civilizations together would be challenging, but we also knew the potential for incredible growth and understanding was immense. Zelar then took the stage, his presence commanding yet gentle. Throughout my time here, I have been moved by your passion, your creativity, and your spirit. I have seen the best of what humanity has to offer, and I have shared the best of Zeltrax. Our cultures are unique, but our aspirations, to live in peace, to protect our families, and to ensure the prosperity of our communities, are the same. He paused, allowing his words to resonate. As I prepare to return to Zeltrax, I take with me not just memories, but tangible plans for continued cooperation. We have agreed to establish an interstellar cultural exchange program, which will allow our people to learn from each other, face to face, in peace. The announcement was met with applause, a sound that echoed the optimism filling the room. Zelar's visit had started with curiosity and was concluding with a legacy of partnership. After the assembly, in a quieter moment away from the cameras and the crowds, Mark and Zelar shared a farewell. "You've changed how we see the universe," Mark said, clasping Zelar's hand. "And you've shown us that understanding is not just about looking out into the stars, but into each other's hearts and minds." Zelar smiled, his eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and hope. "And you have taught me about the strength of diversity and the courage to face the unknown. I leave here a better being, thanks to you and your people." As Zelar boarded his spacecraft to return to Zeltrax, those who had been touched by his visit gathered to watch. The ship ascended, a brilliant point of light against the blue sky, a symbol of the potential for peace and understanding across galaxies. Back on Earth, Mark watched the sky long after the ship had disappeared, thoughtful about the future. The path to interstellar friendship was just beginning, and the challenges ahead were many. But the groundwork laid during Zelar's visit promised a future where such journeys were not just possible, but welcomed. The story of their encounter, filled with lessons of empathy, bravery, and the endless quest for knowledge, would be told and retold, inspiring both humans and Zeltraxians to look beyond their differences and towards a shared horizon.